Conditions May Apply by CinnamonPinecones. Read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 189, The Up and Up. Katsuki wouldn't admit it under threat of death, but he was scared shitless from the moment he snuck out of his house. He didn't know what the hell Deku was up to, but he wasn't going to let him go and do it alone. He had done jack to get them out of their first kidnapping. So if Deku was so keen on giving the League a second chance, he wasn't going to sit by and be useless this time. Or at least, that had been the plan. He didn't even make it 1 minute into Deku showing up before he was caught and forced out. He knew there wasn't a snowball's chance in hell that he would be able to get close enough to hear what they were talking about without Deku noticing him again. So he didn't even bother trying. He had already made a fool of himself once. It wasn't going to happen again. He could barely even get a good view of them around all the weird-ass equipment in this warehouse. And what he could see was just the villain's ugly mug. He tried to read his lips, but he was too far away. And he couldn't make anything out, not even if he used his phone camera to zoom in on his screwed-up face. After 15 minutes, he gave up trying and sat his butt down where Deku told him to wait. So much for being helpful. How the hell did Deku always make him feel so frickin' useless? He started pacing at around the 18-minute mark, and the frickin' bitch villain nearly shoulder-checked him right when he was about to storm back into the place. "Oi, watch it, Bacon McCrispy," he spat at him. The jerk just ignored him and stomped off like a toddler having a temper tantrum. Great, so Deku pissed him off. That idiot had the survival instincts of a frickin' walnut. The stupid jerk wouldn't even stop for a second to listen to him, though Katsuki didn't know why he even considered that he might. They kept walking and arguing until the dilapidated warehouses became dilapidated apartments, and Izuku threatened to tell everyone what he had done to him in grade school if he didn't keep his mouth shut. Katsuki watched Deku climb up onto a dumpster, haul himself up a fire escape, and didn't say a word. Even with how pissed off he was, the last thing the jerk did was tell him how to get home safely. Maybe it was a lack of sleep, or maybe it was the several back-to-back near-death experiences he had been going through lately, but the thought hit him like a truck. Deku was right. He might be an a-hole for looking down on him all these years, but he was right to do it. He remembered the way Shitty Hair had looked at him when he'd asked about Deku's scars that night at camp. He had looked so scared that Katsuki had done that to him, and no matter how much he'd deny it, he couldn't stand to see that face turn into disappointment. It hadn't escaped his notice that most of that stupid little rescue party had been Deku's friends. They weren't there for him, and there was a reason for that. There was a reason he was targeted by the League, and there was a reason All Might was... Shitty frickin' Deku was right. He wasn't going to be a hero like this, but neither was he if he kept meeting up with villains in shady warehouses in the middle of the night. He thought about his future, about how all he'd ever done was so he could be a hero. Then he thought about the gnarled skin on Izuku's chest, and he felt nauseous. He didn't know what to do. Katsuki didn't like not knowing things, and it felt like there wasn't a damn thing he was certain of anymore. Izuku startled from a fitful sleep to see the sun streaming through the curtains. Part of him was still expecting everything to come crumbling down around him, so when he heard the noises of people shuffling around in the kitchen, his heart sank. It was too early for Mike and Eraser to be up without a reason, and as far as he knew, they had nowhere to be. His heart had already been racing when he woke up, but it was only getting worse now. They don't know. There's no way they could know. Calm down. Rip the Band-Aid off and act casual. He took a moment to rhythmically drum his fingers against his thighs before throwing the blanket off and getting to his feet. He opened the door and cast a glance over to the kitchen. Eraser was making coffee, and Mike was sitting at the table on his computer. "Morning, kiddo," Mike greeted him like he always did. Izuku gave a vague grunt of acknowledgement, like someone who was still shaking off the last dregs of sleep would do, and yawned, jaw clicking loudly, like it had been doing since Muscular threw him headfirst into a mountain. He ignored it and shuffled into the bathroom to brush his teeth. They seemed normal, right? Were they normal, or were they too normal? They would have been angry if they knew what he did last night, and if there was one emotion Izuku knew how to pick up on, it was anger. So, no, they were probably normal. But then, why were they up this early? It wasn't even 7 o'clock yet. And, shit, he was going to make his gums bleed if he kept brushing his teeth as hard. Ow. When Izuku sat down at the table, he went from 30% sure that something was up to 90%. Eraser was making pancakes in the kitchen, something he'd only ever done the one time Izuku had scared him awake at ass o'clock in the morning. The silence that hung in the air brought the estimate up to 95%, and the subtle tension in Mike's shoulders bumped it up to 100. "What's going on?" he asked tentatively before he could think better of it. Eraser let out an amused huff from the kitchen, and Mike gave him a reassuring smile. "Nothing bad. We'll tell you once you've eaten," Eraser answered without turning around. He fought against the way his muscles tensed up in response. Why did he need to eat first? That meant they didn't think he'd eat after he heard the news? What could show? If you say it like that, he's just going to freak out more. "Are you burning that?" Mike cut off his spiraling. The murmured curses and shuffling from the kitchen told them both that the answer to that question was an emphatic yes. They both glanced at each other, and thankfully the sound of Mike's laughter masked his own amused snort. "Shut up, or you're getting this one." Eraser snapped back at them without any real heat. Okay, so they probably didn't know about last night, but something was definitely up. His leg bounced lightly against the laminate, and he did his best to remain calm. "Izuku, everything's fine. We just got some news about next semester and stuff to tell you about," Mike attempted to soothe. Izuku chewed on his cheek and gave an unconvincing smile. Did you want help, Eraser?" He pivoted the conversation to something less stressful. "You can call me Shota, you know. I'm wearing sweats and house slippers. I'm not Eraserhead right now." Eraser replied casually, ignoring the question. The idea made Izuku cringe. The thought of Eraser being anyone other than Eraser felt wrong, and he didn't think he would ever get enough sleep to be in the right frame of mind to psychoanalyze why that was. "So, is it the boots that make the difference?" Or Izuku poked fun at his hero costume to change the subject. "Zashi, you're off the hook. Izuku's getting the burnt one." Eraser shot back immediately. "Bold of you to assume there's only going to be one burnt one," Izuku muttered just loud enough for Eraser to hear him. That finally got him to turn around and glare at Izuku, though the unspoken threat was undercut by the smirk he didn't quite manage to hide. Mike was cackling and pointing at the look on Eraser's face like he couldn't see it for himself, and Izuku couldn't help but smile too. This was probably all going to fall apart sooner rather than later, but these rare moments of ease were nice. He was going to miss them. He did his best to shove his anxiety into the back of his mind, and he helped Eraser finish the rest of the pancakes. They had been slowly sliding back into their old playful banter before the whole camp fiasco, and Izuku was glad that the progress hadn't been stunted. It still felt a little awkward, but Izuku always felt awkward when he was just Izuku, because he wasn't really sure who that was anyway. Maybe that would change one day, or maybe it wouldn't. He had more important things to focus on right now. When the two of them had deemed him to have eaten a suitable amount of pancakes, they relented to his questions. UA is planning to implement a dorm system to keep a closer eye on the students this coming semester, Eraser informed. Well, that was going to be interesting with Aoyama. Izuku would be able to keep a better eye on him, but Aoyama would be able to keep a better eye on them just the same. He needed to get closer to the boy to figure out his motivations, regardless, so he could make this work in his favor. Mike and Eraser, however, knew nothing about all of that, so this was unlikely to be the big bombshell that would stop him from finishing his breakfast. There had to be more. Okay, he responded, prompting one of them to say what they were holding back. I'm going to be going around and talking to your classmates' families about it today, but we just got a call from Tsukashi a few hours ago. Yagi has woken up. Eraser stated plainly, watching him intently for his response. Izuku had been doing his best to not let himself think about All Might since they left the hospital. Anytime the image of him lying bloodied and dead-eyed on the broken concrete popped up, he shoved it down as quickly as he could. Thinking about it didn't help anyone, so he didn't. He'd seen all the news outlets theorizing about his death, and he knew why a statement hadn't been made yet. All Might's health was just as likely to get worse as it was to get better. But he woke up. He woke up. Izuku didn't think about what he was going to do if that happened. Is he... How is he? He stuttered out dumbly. He's pretty doped up on painkillers, but Tsukashi said he smiled like an idiot when he asked him if he was all right with you visiting. Eraser answered. Izuku didn't know how to respond to that. He wasn't ready for this. I've got my day cleared out if you want me to take you, but if you don't want to go, that's fine too. You know how painkillers can be. Yagi's probably going to be sleeping a lot anyway. He might not even remember you visiting. Mike spoke up when Izuku didn't say anything. No, I want to. I need to see him. When can... I'll do the dishes. He tripped over his own words as he started gathering plates. Hey, kiddo, pump the brakes. I've got the dishes. Go get ready and we can leave as soon as I'm done, you dig? He muttered out an, I dig, over his shoulder as he left for his room. All Might woke up. Izuku had no clue what his condition was, but he didn't need to be a doctor to know that an 11-day coma was probably not good for a person's long-term health. He'd found himself down enough WebMD rabbit holes in the past week to know what that kind of overexertion can do to a person's body. Heart attacks, brain damage, organ failure, death, etc., etc., etc. It was a miracle that All Might was alive at all, much less coherent enough to at least vaguely answer questions. Izuku got ready much faster than Mike managed to deal with the dishes, but there wasn't really enough space in the kitchen to help, so he just stood anxiously in the doorway. Mike attempted to make small talk on the drive, but Izuku was too lost in his thoughts to really participate, so they ended up just listening to the radio. Traffic wasn't bad, but the drive was still long, so they ended up getting there just before lunch. He only remembered the path to All Might's room in hazy bits and pieces, so he let Mike guide him through the halls back toward a familiar room. All Might looked just as frail as he had the last time Izuku had seen him, but it was nice to see him without tubes shoved down his throat. Gran Torino was there too, which shouldn't have been a surprise in retrospect. He had expected Tsukashi, given that was who had called them, but Izuku supposed he was a pretty busy guy. Boy, All Might greeted him, smiling like an idiot, as promised. The sight made Izuku a little sick to his stomach. He was lying to them all again after everything. He's all yours, kid. Don't listen to a thing he says. It's complete nonsense half the time. Gran Torino greeted, standing up from his post beside the bed. It's not true. I'm totally was the word. All Might trailed off. His voice was rough and low. He sounded tired and, admittedly, completely out of it. Mike was right. He probably won't remember this at all. Coherent? Mike offered. Yamada! Yeah, that's the word. Thanks. Yamada. Name's Torino. Let's give them some time. Kid won't shut up about seeing this one, and I'm getting tired of it. Gran Torino complained. He went to swipe at Izuku's shin with his cane as he passed by, but he dodged it easily. Mike looked between the two of them with a raised brow. I was Toshinori's teacher back in the day. You are? Izuku's guardian, they answered. Izuku could tell Gran Torino gave Mike a very judgmental glare based on the concerned look they shot over to him. New guardian, Izuku clarified. He wasn't sure how much Gran Torino knew about his life, but it was clear to see that he had at least known it had been pretty shitty. Whatever else All Might had told him was up in the air. Gran Torino turned around and raised an eyebrow at his response, but he didn't ask any follow-up questions. Well, I'm getting some more shitty coffee. Feel free to join. Gran Torino offered to Mike before taking his leave. Mike gave him a questioning look, and Izuku nodded him off. Gran Torino seemed to think All Might wanted to talk to him alone, or maybe he just wasn't sure whether Mike was in on the secret of One for All. Is Izuku here too? All Might asked, pulling Izuku's attention away from Mike's retreating form. No, Did Netsu-sensei talk to you yet? UA is going to be making dorms for the students, and Eraser is talking to families today about that, Izuku answered. That's good. Don't think I'd survive those two meetings. They'd probably kill me. All Might responded. Izuku couldn't help snorting out a laugh at that. Yeah, All Might was definitely on the good stuff right now. No, they would. I would tell them about my teaching failures, and then they'd both glare at me till I die, he argued. Izuku laughed again, and All Might smiled at him. You look good. You all right? All Might asked, pivoting the subject. Yeah, I'm fine. Just had, I broke my collarbone and was a bit dehydrated. Few scrapes, bumps, and bruises, he answered honestly. That's good. Well, no, it's not. But it's better than if it was worse. All Might answered inelegantly. Bakugo and the others fine too. Yeah, I think everyone's good, he answered, because admittedly he didn't know. He hadn't read any of the messages his friends had sent, or notably hadn't sent in Hitoshi's case. He didn't want to deal with that can of worms now, or ever. Even with All Might alive and relatively well, he was still angry. What about you? Izuku stuttered out awkwardly. All Might paused to think about the question and frowned. His expressions were so unguarded like this. Izuku sincerely hoped he had been more stoic when he had been hopped up on drugs. I thought I was gonna die. Night Eye said. Ages ago. I was gonna die like that. Really thought that was it? Guess he was wrong. All Might laughed with no humor. Well, kinda wrong. He trailed off. Izuku had a feeling he wasn't really supposed to be hearing any of this. Was that why they didn't talk anymore? Night Eye was the one and only sidekick All Might had in his entire career. He broke off and started his own agency about 5 years ago now, right when All Might had his last fight with All for One. He had the power to see the future, and his predictions were never wrong. Did he look into All Might's future and see this? Is that why they split? Was it Izuku's fault they weren't friends anymore? Furthermore, how was All Might able to dodge fate? Night Eye was never wrong. You did die, didn't you? The question left Izuku's mouth before he could think better of it. All Might gave him a sad smile before answering, Only a little bit, few minutes here and there. I could have sworn I saw you once. You looked so sad. Think that's why I lived. Couldn't bear it. Had to see you smile again. All Might slurred out. His words were getting slower and slower. He'd probably been forcing himself to stay awake until Izuku showed up, and now that he was here, he was crashing again. Izuku bit his lip and felt the telltale sting of tears. All Might's eyes were drooping and half closed, but Izuku turned his head to hide his expression anyway. Oh no, don't cry. Why are you crying? All Might asked after a few seconds. The raw concern in his voice was the last straw to break his composure. A muffled sob escaped his lips, and he pressed his hand over his mouth quickly. He had both watched and felt the light in All Might's eyes go out. Everyone had seen him die on live television. That coldness in his heart was real. All Might had died. Come here, boy. Don't cry, please, All Might pleaded. When he spared a glance back at All Might, he saw his good arm was extended out like he was trying to grab Izuku, even though he was across the room. He looked heartbroken and desperate, and Izuku couldn't stand it. He quickly strode over to All Might and hugged him as gently as possible. He had to stifle another sob when he felt how weakly All Might held him in return. Thin fingers made their way into his hair and scratched his scalp slowly. You might have told me. Had to get better for you. I'm gonna get better for you. Promise. All Might spoke lethargically until his fingers stilled in Izuku's hair. He was asleep. Just asleep. The heart monitor was still beeping. Izuku carefully extracted himself from All Might's loose grasp and wiped his eyes. All Might was fine. Everything was fine. He looked around the room idly and ended up doing something he probably shouldn't have. He grabbed the clipboard at the foot of All Might's bed and started flipping through it. He'd been dead when the paramedics made it to the scene, and after over 8 minutes of CPR, they'd managed to get his heart beating again. He had a series of cardiac events due to overexertion. His lung had been nearly half full of fluid. He had broken most of the bones in his right arm and several ribs as well. He had flatlined 3 more times on the operating table. He had open heart surgery and now had a pacemaker in his chest. It wasn't just one miracle that he was alive right now. It was several. Izuku's hands were trembling too much by the time he got to the end of the document, but he'd seen enough. He put the clipboard back into place and took a shaky breath. He's alive. He lived. He's okay. Izuku watched the heart rate monitor beep steadily until Mike and Gran Torino returned. He blabbers on for hours about seeing you and falls asleep the second you show up. Typical. Gran Torino scoffed. When Izuku finally tore his eyes from the screen, he saw Gran Torino's features as close to a soft expression as he'd ever seen them, which, all things considered, wasn't all that soft. He's the most bull-headed son of a gun I've ever met. He's gonna be fine, Gran Torino reassured him, his voice as gruff as it always was. The lack of an appropriately kind tone was more reassuring than anything he actually said. You all right, kiddo? Mike asked. Izuku didn't trust himself to speak, so he just nodded. I got this card in the shop downstairs. Figured you might want to write him a note, Mike said with a mischievous smile. Izuku took the offered card numbly and barked out a laugh when he actually took in what he was seeing. It was a gaudy red, yellow, and blue card with a picture of All Might standing heroically front and center. On the inside, it said, wishing you a plus ultra recovery. I'm glad you're okay. Text or call me when you're up to it. I hope you feel better soon. Thank you, Izuku. P.S. Blame Mike for the card choice. Before his laughter turned back into tears, he scrawled a quick note on the card, underlining the postscript thrice, just to prove to All Might that he was here in case he didn't remember next time he woke up. It wasn't even a fraction of what he was feeling, but it was all he could stomach right now. He placed the card by a bouquet of flowers that looked like they'd been there for a few days already, and idly wondered who they were from. I don't think he's gonna wake up for a good while yet. Go get lunch or go home. He'll be transferred back to Mustafa in a few days anyway. Doubt he'll stay there for long. Bastard can't sit still for the life of him. Gran Torino dismissed them. Izuku took a moment to watch the LCD tick up and down with All Might's heart before giving Gran Torino a thankful nod and leaving. He felt bad for having made Mike drive him so far for such a short visit, but the thought of staying here listening to All Might's wheezing breaths any longer felt worse. He would be home soon. End of chapter.